Cowboys training camp kicks off in just a few days, and tonight we'll talk about the most important thing heading into training camp that we will be monitoring, as well as other important camp storylines. Let's not waste any time. Let's get to it. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network, and catching up with you guys in between those 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, with shorter, quick-hitting videos, so make sure you subscribe. It feels like Cowboys football is so near. It really does, and I understand it's been such a long offseason since that day in Dallas when the Cowboys lost to the Green Bay Packers in disappointing fashion. And I know that since then, a big part of the narrative has been, how long is it going to take for this fan base to be excited about the Cowboys? And, will regular season success be enough for the fan base to feel that hype again? And I know that to a degree that is still true, but I think we're all excited about watching this team get on the field so we can put some of these offseason conversations in the rearview mirror. We still have a lot of that to go, though. Dak Prescott remains unsigned, and that might heat up over the next few weeks. CeeDee Lamb is likely not showing up for training camp this week, so that will be a conversation that is going to be sparked up again in a matter of days. So we still have a lot of time left on those sort of storylines. But today, we are talking football. We're talking about Cowboys training camp. We're previewing it. And we're going to start by talking about the most important thing from training camp to the Cowboys, to the 2024 Cowboys. And I think, and you can let me know if you agree or disagree in the chat, please do. The most important thing from Cowboys training camp will be Tyler Guyton's development. I think there is no other player that will have a bigger impact on the team as far as what his development looks like in training camp. Like, we know that Micah is going to be a more impactful player. We know that Dak Prescott is going to be a more impactful player. But I don't think there is one player in this particular training camp whose development is more important to the team than Guyton's. And I say that knowing not only that he's going to be protecting Dak Prescott's blind side, but how much that matters to this team specifically. Because it seems to me like the Cowboys are about to enter a season in which the defense is bound to take a step back. And that is due to a lot of reasons. But I think the biggest one is the fact that Dan Quinn is now gone. And we can talk about the improvements of Mike Zimmer taking over this unit compared to Dan Quinn. But Dan Quinn led the number one defense in EPA per play over the last 3 years. 2 of the seasons that Dan Quinn was in front of this unit, the Cowboys led the NFL in takeaways. You've got 2 important defensive ends leaving the squad in Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr. You got Stephon Gilmore leaving the team as well, and he's still a free agent, so he could technically be signed by the Cowboys, but we don't know that will happen. Trevon Diggs is coming back from injury. There's serious questions about the defensive line, particularly at defensive tackle. The Cowboys are likely going to suffer from a degree of defensive regression. And it seems to me that if the Cowboys are going to be the team that we want them to be, right, a successful team in the regular season that can maybe go a little bit further than usual in the playoffs, they will need to lean on the offense, the identity of which will likely be a pass-aggressive unit, just like it was in the back half of the 2023 season, when the Cowboys kind of adjusted, went to a pass-happy approach, were force-feeding CeeDee Lamb. We saw Dak Prescott lead the NFL in completions, lead the NFL in passing touchdowns, and they just wanted to throw the football. And it seems to me like it's a unit that is not built to change that and lean in the running game, on the running game a little bit more. I don't think we saw an offseason in which the Cowboys tried to do that. We could talk about the center position potentially having a better run blocker, right? If Cooper Beebe's development is fast enough to where he can be game ready by week 1, and you can get that nasty style of blocking on the field. But the running back room did not get better. There are serious question marks there, and it's one of the weakest positions on the roster. So there's no doubt that the biggest reason why you would be optimistic about this offense is the fact that second-team All-Pro quarterback Dak Prescott is leading it, and CeeDee Lamb is catching footballs for him, and Jake Ferguson's development will continue. You can talk about Brandon Cooks going into his second year, working with Dak. The passing offense of this team is its biggest asset, easily. And if there's one player that could ruin it or make or break it, it is the guy protecting Dak Prescott's blind side. We've seen how different the Cowboys look when there's a quality left tackle on the field versus when there isn't one. And we even saw it in 2023 when Tyron Smith went down and Chuma Edoga had to take over for him, and the Cowboys were suffering, for example, in the Miami Dolphins game with unblocked defenders hitting Dak Prescott and ruining the offense. So I fully believe that there's no other player whose development is more important in this year's training camp than Tyler Guyton's. He is the story to watch in Oxnard, California. And it's interesting because obviously he enters the league as a professional who, let's be honest, was not considered game ready. I think even though everyone saw him as a first-round prospect, and the Cowboys probably made the correct decision when they traded back and picked him late in the first round of the NFL draft. He was a player who was always about the upside, always about the athleticism, always about what he can be further down the road, but everyone seemed to agree that he was not a pro-ready prospect because of the technique, because of the hand accuracy, because of this, that, and the other. If he's ready to go by week 1 and he's a player that can be above average, that's a big W for the Cowboys. Absolutely. On the other hand, if it's a below replacement level offensive tackle out there, that is one thing that could really be the biggest obstacle for the Cowboys in 2024 in terms of what they want to do offensively. Now, Rich has an interesting question here. Are the rumors true about Guyton not being ready? Honestly, I have not seen specifically a lot of reports on that, but I will tell you this, Rich, I'm not buying anything until training camp starts and the pads come on. Because we know about Tyler Guyton, the athlete, and I'm not buying anything good or bad, by the way, about Guyton. We need the pads to come on, and we need to see the trench warfare take place in Oxnard, California. Now, Cowboys Nation got to be ready, though. Cowboys Nation has got to be ready for Tyler Guyton having a very rough welcome into the NFL. Because one thing is being an above-average tackle in this league. The other one is doing that against Micah Parsons. Micah is going to take Guyton to school. He's absolutely going to do that. Just like with the Marcus Ware and Tyron Smith way back, right? This is going to be a similar situation here. Because Micah Parsons, you can talk all you want about the offseason noise, right? You can talk all you want about the podcast thing with Micah Parsons, this, that, and the other. He is one of the best defenders in the entire NFL. And he's absolutely one of the best pass rushers, arguably the best. I think the only one in the discussion with them is Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns. I would take Micah over TJ Watt, though. I would take Micah over Nick Bosa. I would take Micah over pretty much everyone in the NFL. The one guy that would make me think about it is Myles Garrett, because he's a beast as well. So he's going to lose a lot of those reps, and Cowboys Nation has to be ready for that. Iron sharpens iron, though, as they say. So some of that is going to be a net positive by the time training camp is done, but you will still want to see Tyler Guyton win some reps. You would obviously want to see him win against other pass rushers on the team, but he's absolutely the most important player on the team going into training camp, though, in my opinion. Whose development is. I'm not trying to say that he's more important than Dak Prescott or anything like that, but I hope the idea is understood that I'm talking about a player to follow in training camp. And I don't think there's anyone whose development we should care more about than Guyton. Let me say hi, by the way, in the chat. Welcome everyone into the show. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Terrell, who says, go Cowboys. Arturo says, Tyler Smith can switch to tackle if need be. I would personally, though, be a little bit opposed to that. Several reasons why, though. I understand why Arturo says this, and I don't think he's wrong at all. It's just something that I really am not interested in seeing. Because it would be a little bit of, okay, the Cowboys really have not decided what they want to be in 2024, right? If they make that decision of having Tyler Smith play tackle right before the season starts and having Tyler Guyton on the bench or something like that, if they end up deciding that he's not ready, it's going to be frustrating because I just wouldn't know what the direction is for this team at all, in the sense that if you're trying to win now, I understand that. I understand wanting to have Tyler Smith out there at tackle, but are you not treating this kind of like a soft reset, though? Did you not let Tyron Smith go because you were thinking about the long term and you were happy with the idea of developing a new tackle, having Tyler Smith stay at guard and develop as a guard, which is where his best football has come in his first 2 years in the NFL? It just would feel a little bit like uncommitted, like they're picking a path and not sticking to it. They're just changing paths whenever they can. That's why I wouldn't like it. We're not fans, I think, of the Cowboys taking this approach to the offseason. I think we all would have loved to see the Cowboys be a little bit more aggressive in the offseason, in free agency, and do this and that and the other. If the Cowboys had done that and they were trying clearly to go all in 2024, I would be like, hey, if it's what you need to do, go ahead and play Tyler Smith at tackle. I'm fine with it. But it's not what they're seemingly trying to do. It seems like they're setting themselves up for the future. And if that is the case, then just let Tyler Smith stay at one place. Don't ruin Tyler Smith. If there's one thing we ask for them, is don't ruin Tyler Smith, who is the future of the offensive line. Zach Martin is likely going to retire after this season. And then who's going to be the captain of that unit? It's going to be Tyler Smith. Just don't ruin him. There's something special going on with Tyler Smith at guard. I would not be a fan of that, personally. Now, William White says, any chance that Guyton starts off at right tackle? Ooh, that's interesting. I would be surprised. I don't think we've heard any of that yet. You've got Terrence Steele, obviously. I don't know how I would feel about having Tyler Guyton at right tackle, and then who's my left tackle? Because I don't want Terrence Steele at left tackle, right? I don't think that will be a possibility, but also let's not rule anything out, right, until training camp starts. Travis Power says, Mo, 100%, you can't ruin these young guys. I wouldn't like the snip-snap approach for Tyler Smith. So anyways, Gregory, though, says, I think a very important aspect of training camp will be who will be the starting center for the Cowboys and how will he do. And we'll talk more about this, I believe, later on in the week. But Gregory is 100% right. That is the battle of training camp, right? With Guyton, there's not so much of a battle going on. It's just, can he develop and be ready to go in time? But he's going to be the starting left tackle of the Cowboys. I think we all know that. Unless Guyton is underwhelmingly bad and the Cowboys are like, okay, we cannot put that guy on the field, which would be disappointing as heck, obviously. But I do believe that there is not exactly a battle going on. If there is a battle, it's Guyton versus himself. Versus center, where you've got two legit players, Cooper Beebe, the third-round rookie, nasty blocker, versus Brock Hoffman, who might not be the most exciting guy in the world as a player, but he did the job pretty decently when the Cowboys asked him to do so early in the season last year. So you've got a battle going on there. I do think that is one of the best battles that we will be watching in Oxnard. And as far as battles go, it is the most important. I will say that. It is the most important battle of training camp going into 2024. We might talk more about that soon here on Primetime. But in the meantime, most important player from training camp, Tyler Guyton, in my opinion. Let me flip the conversation, though, a little bit. Let's turn the page here and think about that defense. And similar conversation, who is the most important player in training camp for the Cowboys defense in 2024? And again, just like with the offense, the most important Cowboys defender is Micah Parsons. And then after that, it might be Trevon Diggs, DeMarcus Lawrence, perhaps. You could make an argument for Daron Bland, I guess. Ozo Digisuwa is a pretty important player as well. But if you're asking me, who is the most important player, again, as far as how will he develop, how will he look in Oxnard this summer, I think it's Mazi Smith. And just in general, I think Mazi Smith is one of the most important defenders of the 2024 NFL season for the Cowboys. I think overall, I wouldn't rank Mazi Smith at 4th or something. Like, I would make him a top 3 defender in terms of how important he will be to the success of this team. The reason why, mainly, is if Mazi Smith does not improve, if Mazi Smith is not a playable nose tackle for the Cowboys in 2024, your front seven might be a massive game-breaking weakness this season. I wholeheartedly believe that. The defensive tackle room, I've said for a good while now, is the biggest weakness on this roster. Bigger than running back, easily. People are concerned about the offensive line. I am too, but I wouldn't say that that is the biggest weakness of this team. I would say defensive tackle is. I love Oza. I think he's a great player. I think he's a great 3 technique. I think he's going to get paid, and I'm not fully confident in him remaining a Cowboy for a long time because the Cowboys do got to pay Micah and CD and Dak, and I think a possible odd man out will be Oza with the way that they're paying defensive tackles nowadays. I think Oza might be playing his last year on the Cowboys even. Like, I think that's a very real possibility here. But anyways, you still need a nose tackle, and I'm not sure the Cowboys have one right now. At least not a starting caliber one. They're betting on Mazi Smith. And if Mazi Smith does not develop properly, does not develop in a positive way going into year 2 of his NFL career, then what are the Cowboys going to do when the team is insisting on running the football up the middle over and over and over again? Because sure, the Cowboys signed Eric Kendricks, and that's a signing that I liked. It's a signing that I had called for before it actually happened. So I cannot backtrack and be like, oh, the Cowboys didn't do anything I liked during the offseason. But other than that, they didn't do anything. So the fact that they lost Jonathan Hankins, the fact that they didn't add an impact maker in free agency at nose tackle or defensive tackle, and the fact that they're just betting everything on Mazi Smith, who did not maintain weight as a rookie even, is not ideal. And you can improve, as they could have brought in Roquan Smith to play at linebacker. And with this defensive tackle room, I would be worried about teams just running the ball up the middle over and over again. Because if you don't have quality play in the interior defensive line, there's only so much the linebackers can do, right? Because the reads are dirty. Offensive linemen are climbing to the second level with ease, and it's a problem. So I would say that Mazi Smith is one of the most important players on this team going into 2024, just because if it isn't fixed, yikes, that might be a game-breaking problem for the Cowboys. Now, the thing that I worry about with Mazi is how fixable are things for him. He can maintain weight, and it can be a very different story, right? That's the biggest thing. But then, out of that, how much of what we saw in 2023 can we be like, oh, you see that? You see that on film? there's the upside again. Like, he's going to be much better in 2024. It's difficult to find that on film because I'm not sure we even saw him play the role that we want him to play in 2024 a whole lot, right? Because he wasn't really playing nose tackle a lot of the time because of the size and everything. So to me, it's a little bit of a, like, I am measuring my expectations with Masi because he's going to be playing at a different weight than he did as a rookie. He's going to be kind of fulfilling a different role, and he's going to be asked to play much, much more because he had a very low snap count in 2023, and suddenly they're asking him to, hey, now you're the starter. And there's not a Jonathan Hankins that they can rotate him with. There's Justin Rogers, 7th-round draft pick, who I'm not sure it's fair to put heavy expectations on him. There's a UDFA also on the team that might end up earning a role, right? There's Denzel Daxon. There's Carl Davis, who has been a career backup pretty much since he's been in the NFL. So I'm skeptical regarding Masi Smith. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm skeptical with it, but cannot deny how important he is. Now, if it's not Masi Smith, if we're talking about the most important storyline in training camp for the Cowboys, maybe it's Trevon Diggs' health, right? Is his knee ready to go, and is he going to be back to his level of play prior to the injury, or is this going to be another Michael Gallup Terrence Steele situation? Because if it is, man, that's another concern unlocked. So hopefully Trevon Diggs shows up healthy, ready to go, and the Cowboys secondary does not miss a beat going into 2024. Let's see some of your comments around here. Arturo says, Masi is the key for sure. If we cannot stop the run, then nothing else matters. And I do agree with that because you know how much I love the passing game in the NFL, and I do think that is the most important aspect of the game today. But you cannot stop the run, it's game over, as the Cowboys have learned in multiple occasions. And most dramatically in the Green Bay Packers game and going back to the regular season in that Buffalo Bills game, which was awful. Anyways, Guru says, Guyton worked with Duke Manyweather. Why would he not be ready? Says Guru. And that might be fair, but also, like, Duke Manyweather, although he has a very positive track record with the Cowboys, cannot change. I mean, it's not a guarantee, right? Like, it's definitely something that we should be excited about, him working with Big Duke, because, again, his track record is impeccable, honestly, with the Cowboys and with the players that he has worked with. But I remember when we had James Foster here on the show, A to Z Sports film room analyst, and he made an interesting point when he said, I don't think people were fair to Tyler Smith during the draft process because sure, he was raw in several areas, but James Foster argued that Tyler Smith was never as much of a raw prospect as Tyler Guyton is, right? Because Foster's argument back then was you watch Tyler Smith play, and by the end of the season at Tulsa, he was a very different player. So the building blocks were already there. With Tyler Guyton, maybe that isn't the case. So let's just be ready for that possibility. I do think that Duke is awesome. I also think Duke understands offensive line development, and if it's going to take a longer time with Guyton, then it's just going to take a longer time with Guyton. It's the way that it is. Shout out to Rich, who has a super chat for us. Man, I appreciate the support, the comment, the donation. Rich says, hey, Mo, do you think we get these contracts done this week? Boom. I think Dak and CD end up being signed before the season. I've said that for a good while now. It doesn't make sense not to pay Dak Prescott at least. I do think it just doesn't make sense to not do it. Doesn't make sense. I think it ends up happening. I think the Cowboys end up caving in. Don't know about this week, though. Wouldn't be surprised if it takes a little bit longer, especially with CD Lamb. Especially with CD, for sure. I do think it gets done, though. Especially Dak. Man, I know the Cowboys can be a little bit frustrating with the way that they do business with their players and their contracts and all that. But just why wouldn't you extend Dak Prescott? And some people will say, because he's never won in the playoffs, and I understand that. Like, I understand the frustration side of it. But being objective, what is the alternative? It's not Trey Lance. Man, it's not Trey Lance, right? And we'll talk about him in a little bit here on the show, but I think it gets done, Rich. That's my gut feeling. That's what my gut is telling me. I do think that if it doesn't get done by the time the Cowboys season kicks off, then I do think it's over. I just, at that point, I don't see Dak Prescott not reaching free agency. I just don't. And if he does reach free agency, a team is going to pay a disgusting amount of money for him, I believe. The Giants, the Raiders, one of those teams. And I know everyone mentions the Giants and the Raiders as like the top targets for, or the top landing spots for him, and I think both make a lot of sense, right? But I do think it gets done. Hopefully that is the case. Now, before we get out of here, though, few other stories to follow in training camp, and we'll talk more about this throughout the week. But since this is a camp preview, thought I had to touch on this. We've talked a lot about the wide receiver 3 battle. It's going to be exciting, right? Is it going to be Jalen Tolbert? Is it going to be Jalen Brooks? Is it going to be a little bit of a committee there with some Kevontae Turpin mixed in? Maybe with some Deuce Vaughn mixed in, who, despite being a running back, worked as a slot wide receiver at least partially during the spring OTAs minicamp. Deuce Vaughn talked to the media about it. He's getting some wide receiver reps in. We don't know exactly what that means for him in terms of, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We'll find out soon enough. But we're all excited about that, right? Who's going to emerge as a number 3 wide receiver for this offense? Because sure, committee sounds fun. Most ideal thing would be for somebody to stand out enough to be like, okay, we need this guy on the field more often. He's going to be a straight up number 3 wide receiver. Now, I will say this, though. Although I'm excited about finding out who's going to play as a number 3 wide receiver on the offense, I think a massive story to follow is Brandon Cooks' development going into year 2 with the Cowboys. Chemistry was not great for Dak and Brandon Cooks early on in the year. And even late in the year when Dak was throwing the football constantly to Brandon Cooks, there was some disconnect in the vertical routes, like especially the fly routes, like just going straight down the field. They didn't connect in a whole lot of those. They did in some, but for the most part, there were some misses there. There were some miscommunication issues as well. Going into year 2, no CeeDee Lamb, extra time with Brandon Cooks. I do wonder if that is going to be much more impactful for the 2024 Cowboys than whoever ends up being number 3 wide receiver, right? If Brandon Cooks and Dak are locked in since September, that is bigger for the offense than whoever is number 3 between Tolbert and Brooks and all that. So I'm excited about that specifically. I really am. Now, this is maybe a story that has been a little bit buried because we've moved on to the players and everything, but I want to learn about Mike Zimmer's defense, and I've got a question specifically, and that is it going to be Dan Quinn's scheme just called by Mike Zimmer, or is Zimmer going to really implement his system in 2024? And it's a challenge, obviously, because of the language and everything. Every coach is different, so there's going to be some marriage of ideas in there. But how much are the Cowboys going to change how they do things? I would assume a lot, because I don't think Mike Zimmer is someone that you bring in to call someone else's defense. But I want to see if that identity is already noticeable during the summer, at least a little bit. If we start seeing already more split field coverages, if we start seeing less hybrid fronts and all that, and maybe a more traditional looking defense, for better or worse, from Mike Zimmer, I want to see more of that. And of course, the question everyone's been asking since he was hired, what exactly is the plan with Micah? Is it pass rusher all the time? Is it some off-ball linebacker stuff? How often, if so? What does the linebacker rotation look like, which would impact how Micah is being used. I want to learn more about all that. And finally, before we get out of here, an interesting note on Trey Lance. So at least I thought it was pretty interesting. And I'm going to read you this. So I was reading the Cowboys website the other day, and as you know, there's a lot of good stuff in there. Came across a couple of interesting quotes that I missed. They're from not exactly a mailbag. I'm trying to find this. Give me a second here while I look for it on the Dallas Cowboys website. But I saw some quotes in there that were not nearly as confident in Trey Lance being number 2 on the quarterback depth chart as a lot of us would have assumed. So that really caught my attention. Trying to find you the quotes here before we get out of here. So this is from an article on the DallasCowboys.com website. Can Trey Lance overtake Cooper Rush? Several writers chime in. I think Nick Edmonds was the most interesting answer because he said, Rush has been better in the brief things we've seen in the offseason. Rush has a good command of what the Cowboys are trying to do schematically, and let's face it, Rush has been better than Lance when he's been asked to play. I think it's a fair competition. I can see Rush still being the number 2 QB heading into the season. That was interesting. Kurt Daniels, who's the editor of the magazine for the Cowboys, had this quote, unless Lance really jumps off the page this coming August, I would think they stick with what they know. And then Patrick Nosey Walker, the legend, he says, it's possible for Lance to beat out Cooper Rush, blah, blah, blah. But he says, Rush has never been an easy out, and he's not only one of the better backups in the league, but his familiarity with McCarthy, Dak, receivers, and the entire offense plays largely in his favor. This is a matchup that is probably top 3 and wants to watch in Oxnard. It says Patrick Walker and Miki Spagnuolo, something along those lines as well. Thought it was interesting to see that much support for Cooper Rush in that article. And of course, these are people that were there for minicamp, were there for OTAs, are talking to people in the organization. So I'm just wondering, could Lance really lose this battle? Because that would be bad. That would be rough for Lance. It would be rough for how we perceive the trade from last year. I talked to Sky when he joined the show the last time. Skywalker Steele and I remember us talking about, did they do that out of spite? Did they trade for Trey Lance out of spite? And as Skywalker's and I theories that, they did. I mean, they made that move out of spite, and it's not aging well for them. If he does not beat out Cooper Rush for the QB2 job, I just don't think it's going to be a great look for them personally. The real Darrell says if Cooper Rush beats out Trey Lance, that would mean Lance is not ready to be QB2. And I agree. Because Lance has something going for him, and it's the upside, right? So if he doesn't beat out Cooper Rush, it's like the Cowboys didn't even think that it was worth making Trey Lance QB2 because of the upside. It's going to be a rough look. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning into the show tonight. Do me a favor, hit the like button. It helps out a lot putting this show in front of more and more Cowboys fans. So take half a second, hit the thumbs up. That is huge for us here at A to Z Sports Dallas. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you again tomorrow in a quick hitting video. We will be back live on Sunday at 8 p.m. Thank you so much. Enjoy your week. Have a great rest of your Sunday night. Ladies and gentlemen, Cowboys training camp is about to kick off in a matter of days. You're going to be here to enjoy it. Good night. Bye-bye.